At 6 o'clock, we are in session for the City Council. And if you would stand for the invocation. Lord God, as the City Council, help us to do right and to keep doing it and to do it in the right spirit. In Christ's name, amen. Amen. If you remain standing for the pledge, we have some scouts from Troop 60 who are going to lead us in the pledge.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have our announcements of community interest, and Mr. Cunhas, if you would share with us, and then I have one presentation after you present.
I'll say hello to everybody. Glad you all made it tonight. Hope everybody has survived the rain today. We'll just have one announcement, and this is going to be another big weekend in Kerrville. We had, of course, the triathlon 2 weeks ago, and this weekend we have the Chalk Festival, and that's Saturday and Sunday right down here on Peterson Plaza. So I encourage all of y'all to come out here. Talking about the rain earlier today, everybody say a prayer that we can get through Saturday without rain. There is a pretty good chance right now, but hopefully it'll clear up, because this is a great event, and if you really want to see what we'd love to see every Saturday night in downtown, come down Saturday night and take part in this, because it's a lot of fun.
All right.
And you had something you wanted to add, or?
I am going to add something, yes. We have one of our former mayors here tonight, Mr. Ben Lowe. Ben, if you will come stand by me, and I have a certificate of appreciation, and I know this does not cover all that Ben Lowe has done in this community for years and years, 50 years in fact, in the banking and finance industry, and as past mayor. Let me read this. Certificate of recognition and expression of thanks is hereby presented to Ben Lowe.
That's all right. They've done that before.
Yeah, okay. Well, we got to correct that. It's L-O-W, not an E. Okay. For being a citizen of the great city of Kerrville for 50 years, for raising 3 children in this great city, and I might add a granddaughter, for serving as mayor of Kerrville from May 1998 to May 2000, for getting things done as mayor, for being a proud ambassador for Kerrville, for his leadership in the community, for being active in the banking and finance industry, for being deeply committed to doing the right thing even when it was not popular. I'm going to sign this, but we're going to get this corrected too. But Ben was known as a very effective mayor, and Brenda Craig right over there will testify to that, and he just committed to doing the right thing because he loved this community. And so this is a way of saying thanks. I will tell you, Ben is 90 years old, and he and his wife Sue are moving to Lubbock very soon. And so we wanted to get this certificate of recognition to you. You want me to hold on to it?
I'm going to say something.
Okay.
I realize I only have 5 minutes, according to this thing over here, and it takes 5 minutes just to get started. But the truth of the matter is, 50 years ago, when my family and I came to Kerrville, we had no idea that we were going to live here that long. And really, to bring me down here and to thank me for the things that I may have contributed, really, we should be thanking the city of Kerrville as a community for what they did for us. It was a great place to raise your family, and a great place to get a haircut from Louis. And we had a great experience, lots of wonderful people to work with, And we saw Kerrville grow from what it was at that time to what it is today, and get ready because it's going to continue to grow.
That's true. That's true. All right. Hey, I'm going to hold on to this and get it to you. Okay? All right. You know that saying about we stand on the shoulders of others? Very true. Okay, visitors forum, individuals who want to speak and may do so for 4 minutes. There will be no discussion on this or action. Okay. We move to the consent agenda, and there is one item the staff has asked to remove from the consent agenda, and that is 3F regarding electioneering at polling places, etc. And that will be brought separately by the staff.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items. I did have some comments that I went over with the city manager on yesterday quite thoroughly, so I'm comfortable with them.
All right. Do we hear a second?
I second.
Okay.
Okay, but I actually have, I need to pull one. The 3B, the meeting minutes, had a couple of minor changes, and I mean really minor.
Okay.
And I wanted to pull the 3E, the Fox Tank thing.
All right. So you want to pull 3B, 3E.
Correct.
All right. Then let's come back to the motion, and that is to adopt the consent agenda, except for 3B, 3E, and 3F. So we're talking now about 3A, 3C, and 3D. Do I hear a motion to accept those?
I'll make a motion that we accept A, C, D,
All right.
3A, C, and D.
Yeah.
And I second.
Okay, second, Ms. Eichner, okay. All in favor of that motion, if you'd let me know by the raised hand? All right, it's unanimous. So, Mr. Broody, if you will go to 3B.
Yeah, so it's 3B, the meeting minute. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. I asked about this before, and I'm told it's because there's not a speaker there, but I'll just yell. So 3B, the minutes on September 11th, section 11, future agenda items. It talks about the farmer's market item, and it gave credit to me on that one. It was actually Councilmember Vocal. So in parentheses, we just changed that to Councilmember Vocal. And then the meeting minutes on September 25th, this is about as minor as it can get, but I haven't begun identifying as a woman yet. On item 4A, it just says Miss Baruti, that's all, it's no big deal. You see what I'm saying? It's no big deal, I just happened to see it. So anyways, so those are the only two changes I had on those. And I would make a motion that we pass all those three, I guess it's 4 minutes, with those two minor changes.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? We're ready to go? All right, all in favor of 3B, if you'd let me know, by the raised hand. Okay, unanimous. And now, 3E.
I don't know if I should ask my questions or if they were going to present by pulling this off. I don't know which way works.
Okay, do we have a presentation on that?
Okay. I just wanted to understand, I mean, I know why we're doing it, and I get that, and everything's fine, but I guess I was just curious if we were really So as I understand what it is a 3-year initial term on this agreement. We're essentially waiving fees through a 380 agreement with Fox Pink. And it's a 3-year term with 1-year renewals pretty much forever, right? Is that the way it's?
As long as they meet their requirements.
Right.
And it can be terminated though.
Right, so, I thought that we weren't allowed to sort of do 380 agreements that are sort of indefinite on the end. Is that not correct?
As long as there's a termination clause, I think we're okay.
Okay. And I think, and we're okay with kind of double dipping on the clawbacks that, because the employment, I guess the employment requirements is the way it's being termed in here.
Right.
Those are already in place to, as clawbacks, if you will, requirements to an agreement we already have with them, right?
The EIC, not the
Right,
city.
okay. And so, we're not imposing any new requirements, and then when that EIC agreement's over, are we able to do that? That we're allowed to apply that same sort of, whatever the employment
Yes.
numbers are?
Yes.
That's what we're doing though, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right, well, that's really all I was asking. And so with that, I would make a motion that we adopt it, I guess, as presented.
Okay, we got a motion on 3E.
I'll second.
Okay, Wagner seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay. Let me ask you this. When will we pick back up 3F?
We can do that now, sir.
Okay, let's do that before we go to the public hearings.
Okay, we just need Brenda to, I'm sorry, Cheryl to read into the record, please.
Ordinance number 2018-30, amending Chapter 70, Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 2, Electioneering at Polling Places, Section 70-42, Definitions, to revise the definition of voting period, and to revise Section 70-43, Regulations and Exceptions, to continue to authorize the placement of political signs on city property and to allow such signs to remain through the duration of a voting period, containing a savings and severability clause, providing for penalties not to exceed $2,000, ordering publication, providing an effective date, and providing other matters related to the subject.
Thank you. So this item was put on the consent originally because it was perceived as being fairly routine, because we've been including this in some of your interim reports for some time now and on your future agenda listing, and many of you have already asked me questions about it, but it is an ordinance, and we do require 2 readings of an ordinance, and so that's why I went ahead and asked for it to be pulled to avoid any confusion. This ordinance does simply eliminate the requirement that political signs be removed from the Callow property each evening. And this was somewhat of an issue. In fact, it was a pretty significant issue in the primaries, particularly at the congressional level, U.S. congressional level, where you had a lot of outside candidates that were having to come back into town, or their campaign workers. This was instituted in 2014, the requirement that they be removed. Couldn't really discover or find out why it was implemented. I did talk to Jeffrey over at the Callow Center about it. He did not have an issue with allowing them to remain, but this is entirely at the discretion of the council. You all are the ones that are impacted by campaigns, or involved in campaigns, so it's up to you whether you want to do this or not.
What's the downside?
Well, you know, I have heard arguments that some candidates may put their signs up in one place, and then they're permanently there, and then the other candidates don't have a chance to put their signs in the same location the next day because they're still there. So it's just that kind of a thing in terms of a level playing field, so to speak. But all the campaign signs, as far as the distance from the door, you know, the size of the print, all that's governed by state law.
All right. Okay. What's the discussion on this one?
I don't see a need to change it. I like it the way it was. I really enjoyed Mayor trying to beat you there in the morning, putting signs out. And you beat me a couple times. I beat you, and it was fun. Well, like Mark said, you get an opportunity to place your signs. I don't know if signs win elections, but it's pretty neat to be able to put them the next day. You have the opportunity to put them closer to the front. And early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse might get the cheese.
Anybody else?
It is kind of an inconvenience to have to be there till 7 or 6:30, sometimes 6:45, and remove all of them. However, I do think we do pay a lot for signs, and a lot of times they go missing. And I think it's kind of nice to have some responsibility to be able to collect them, bring them back out, and then you have from 7 until whenever, when the street is normal again. I see pros and cons. I think it would be nice to not have to get up at the crack of dawn and get signs up. And my husband would agree, I'm sure. He was a big help for me. But yeah, I think I agree with Vince, and actually that I think it would be good to give everyone a chance, and that's basically what you'd be doing. And even though it is a little bit of a hassle to have to get them back down, what do y'all think? What's your opinion?
I would ask this question. So what we're really saying is not to get all like overly localized when we put the walls up, but this change is being driven by non-Kerrville sort of candidates, right? The higher up offices, is that what's driving this change?
Primarily, that's where the complaints came from, is the higher level of government elections.
Right. So, I mean, and based on what others have already said, and I raised that issue about, we reshuffle the sign order every day. I kind of like that idea. But, I guess I don't care a lot either way, but it kind of like leave things alone unless there's a better mousetrap that we're creating.
Yeah. I agree with Mr. Bariti. I don't think we need to change it. I think it has some advantages the way it is.
Okay.
So,
I think we will have a less cluttered look
yeah.
For a period of time, anyway.
for a period of time, yes.
So, do I hear a motion to defeat 3F?
I'll move that we deny ordinance 2018-30, amending chapter 70.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Vogel, second. All in favor of denying that, if you would let it be known by the raised hands. Okay. And I must say that Mr. Vogel is quite an opponent in terms of getting up and putting signs up. And all right.
Mayor, excuse me, Mrs. McCain, did you still want to speak?
Just the definition of voting period.
Okay, if you'll come to the podium. Okay.
Peggy McKay, P.O. Box 291464, Kerrville, Texas. You answered everything on there about what was going on with the signs, but it says revise the definition of voting period.
I couldn't tell you because the city attorney drafted the ordinance.
Yeah, the city
All I can tell
attorney.
you is that we didn't change it, so it's the way it was, right?
It's a non-issue.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There you
Okay,
go.
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
So wait, so you live in a mail, P.O. box?
Pardon?
Nothing. I was just being stupid. Sorry.
Okay. We are now in a public hearing, and anyone may speak the items here. You don't have to sign in, but if you have, that's okay. You'll be limited to 4 minutes, and state your name and street address for the record before speaking.
I'll give a brief introduction, Mayor, on 4A and 4B if you'd like. 4A is...
Wait, sorry. It is, we're moving into this at 6:18.
4A is Resolution
Drew.
41, 2018.
Drew, she needs to read into the record first.
Oh, excuse me.
A resolution granting a conditional use permit for an approximate 0.132 acre tract of land, being Lot 1, Block 28 of J.A. Tybee Edition, a subdivision within the City of Kerrville, Kerr County, Texas, and otherwise known as 1220 Broadway, State Highway 27, said property being located within the 17-C zoning district by permitting said property to be developed and used for personal services, 1, beauty parlor / barber shop, and making said permit subject to certain conditions and restrictions.
Thank you, ma'am. 1220 Broadway is Zone 17C, and they're requesting a conditional use permit for the personal services to have a salon. It is an existing building, and they'll be using that existing building and existing parking. Be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
I've got one question. So we're doing a public hearing, we're going to open a public hearing for 2 items? Is that correct? Is that what we're doing?
One at a time.
Okay, but the second one is going to have a public
Close.
hearing?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, because that was a question I was going to have later. Okay, carry on.
Okay.
All right, do we have any questions in regard to that?
I have one question, Mayor.
Yes.
It's actually part of the resolution on parking. Drew, maybe you can answer this. It says parking must be constructed of asphalt or concrete. I don't know if it really is subject to this property, but do we allow granite? Or is this just, okay,
Zoning code does allow for.
okay. That was just my question.
And I have a question. How many clients will they be able to accommodate at one time?
I believe they were planning on 2 chairs. 2
Okay,
chairs in the
2?
salon.
Okay. And so parking would be for 3 or 4?
Right.
All right. Do I hear a motion in regard to this?
Mr. Mayor, we need to close the public hearing first.
Okay, sorry.
I don't know if there was anybody signed up to speak, Cheryl? Okay.
Okay. Anything else from council? All right.
I'll make a motion.
What are your wishes?
I'll make a motion that we pass resolution 41-2018 granting the conditional use permit as presented.
Okay, all right.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Hey, this is not germane to the issue, but are they still called beauty parlors?
In the zoning code they are.
What?
In the zoning code they
Oh,
are.
in the zoning code, okay, all right. Okay. Next, public hearing 4B. Ms. Brown, if you'll read that for us.
A resolution granting a conditional use permit for Lot 2-R, Block 1, Freeman Fritz Addition, a subdivision within the City of Kerrville, Kerr County, Texas, and otherwise known as 601 Spur 100 North. Said property is located within the 27-E zoning district by permitting said property to be used for a manufactured home or a manufactured housing and making said permit subject to certain conditions and restrictions contained herein.
Okay, Mr. Paxton.
This is a conditional use permit for a manufactured home. The property is currently occupied by a group known as VA Dogs. They do training with veterans and service animals. They're looking to have a manufactured home on site for a staff member to be there 24 hours to offer any needs that the veterans that are on site may have after the office is closed. You can see on the site plan, some of the other locations that they previously were going to use manufactured homes are actually using park model RVs. So the manufactured home that they'll have is in that top left corner for the staff member.
Okay.
With that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Yeah. Do you have anyone to speak to this? All right, okay. We go out of public hearing. Council? Discussion?
I was going to say, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 42-2018.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second, Wagner. All right. If there's no further discussion,
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I'm curious. So it's really an RV park?
No, sort of. They're using RVs more or less as kind of the tiny home type RV. So the VA dogs owns the RVs, and the veterans just stay there for up to about a month while they're training the dog to the veteran, the
okay.
veteran to the dog.
Okay.
So it's short-term stay, and then they'll come back if they have any other future training.
Okay.
But the RVs are actually owned by the VA dog group, so they stay there.
So they stay?
Correct.
Okay. And so this is a permanent,
Right, this would be a
Position.
permanent manufactured home, which does require the conditional use permit.
okay.
So I had one question along those lines. So what we're granting here is conditional use permit for this manufactured home. Are we basically saying they can build more of them on that lot, or are we just saying they can build this one?
Just that one. If they do anything different on the site plan, they'll have to come back to P and Z and City Council.
Okay.
okay. All in favor of this motion, if you'd let me know by the raised hand. Okay. Let me just say that training program with those dogs, working with the vets, is just excellent. It's really, really good. Okay. As we move toward 5A, public hearing, ordinances, first reading. Ms. Brown, would you read that for us?
Ordinance number 2018-23, annexing an approximate 58.74 acre tract of land out of the Joseph S. Anderson Survey 141, abstract number 2, and the J.S. Sater Survey number 142, abstract number 290, into the corporate limits of the City of Kerrville, Texas, said tract being located within Kerr County, Texas, and the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Kerrville, Texas, and addressed as 1515 Knapp Road South, further describing the property to be annexed, adopting a service plan for the property annexed, and establishing the zoning for the property annexed.
Let me say one thing. Once again, I failed to announce the time that we went into that public hearing. It was 6:26:30.
The annexation timeline is for actually the next 4 items. This is the 4th time this has come before council as part of that process. From the petition reading and acceptance, the first and second public hearings in September. Tonight is the actual first reading of the ordinance and public hearing for the zoning. So there's approximately 58, 59 acres along Thompson Drive and Nimitz Lake for annexation. I'd be pleased to answer any questions after the public hearing.
All right. Do we have any to this?
Justin McDonald.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Justin McDonald, 2956 Dry Hollow Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. I believe we have a presentation, yes, that is queued up. Wonderful. So there's been a little bit of speculation and some misinformation out there about what exactly we're planning to do in this development, and so I just wanted to take a few minutes to just briefly run through our current plans for this development, as well as to kind of just show some pictures of other similar developments that we're hoping to model after, just so that folks have kind of an idea in their minds about what we're going to be proposing here. So first off, as you've seen, the name of this development is going to be called The Landing. Being on the side of the lake, we felt like that was an appropriate name. As Drew mentioned, it's a roughly 60-acre mixed-use development that we're going to be planning along Nimitz Lake. Including the uses included in that will be luxury apartments, townhomes, office and commercial space, including our own corporate headquarters that we'll be relocating here from outside of Kerrville, restaurants, bars and entertainment venues, craft artisans, and boutique retail. This is just, and I apologize that it's very small, but this is the current iteration of our master land plan that follows the lines of the preliminary plat that was approved by P&Z. We have made a few changes from the original preliminary plat to accommodate our neighboring property owners and being able to ensure that they have good access into their properties. So this is a little better colorized version, concept drawing of what we're planning, and I'll take you through kind of each use one by one. So first off, we have luxury apartments. We have a long track record of this as a company. The picture that you see there is actually of our Orchard Grove apartments that we completed in Fredericksburg last year. And we plan to bring that same concept here. We'll be using the same architect, design team, and construction folks. It's been very well received in Fredericksburg, and I think it'll be very well received here in Kerrville as well, and should help address some of our housing needs in the city. In addition to that, we also plan to provide townhomes. That's on the red area. Let me see if I can figure this out. Right over here. So we'll be doing townhomes, and at this time we're looking at somewhere between 36 to 50 units of townhomes. And this is a similar development that we also did in Fredericksburg, and hope to pattern these townhomes a little bit after that. They will also be a luxury kind of upscale townhome built in mind for folks that don't want to take care of yards anymore, downsizing from a larger home, that sort of thing. Office and commercial space we have in this corner, and then over on this corner as well, both kind of looking down on the river. And our idea to model that is actually this building, which is located off of Lehman Drive here in Kerrville. I've personally admired that building for years since it was built, and so that's kind of the model we want to use. It's going to be an office space, a commercial space, but it is going to be a very hill country looking space architecturally. Restaurants, as you can see down here along the river's edge, we have 4 restaurant pad sites, restaurants, bars, and that sort of thing. And this is just a restaurant with a big outdoor space overlooking the water. You can see here, I forgot exactly where this is, but it's a spot that I really thought captured the essence of what we want to do. Very river-centric, outdoor-centric space. We want to be sort of one of the first developments in Kerrville to actually take advantage of the river rather than turning our backs on it. There's a little bit of that across the river and Chili's and those and some of the other restaurants, but by and large, I don't feel like the river's been adequately utilized in Kerrville historically, and we'd like to change that. Craft artisans, we have a space dedicated over here for that. Think of Round Top, think of the small kind of antique and craft dealers. Think of folks that are making things by hand, leathersmiths, hat makers, boot makers, anything that can be made on site, potentially even something like craft brewing, craft wines, something of that nature is what we've got in mind for this area. We want it to be very Kerrville-centric again. That's our theme for the whole area. Is that we want this development, the landing, to reflect the best of the hill country and Kerrville and what we've got to offer. And then, of course, keeping in that theme, we are planning to dedicate a piece of land to the city for a potential park and trailhead. That will be down in this corner, and there will be parking provided for that. And then we also, along here, have our own common access river trail that we will be doing ourselves, and have potentially discussed with the city about dedicating that as a public river trail at a later date. But at least for the time being, we'll have our own common area park that will be available for folks that are visiting the landing to enjoy. This is about us. I think y'all probably are aware of that, because it was in the recent workforce housing RFP, and a lot more information than this. But we are based here in Kerr County, but our office is, as I mentioned, currently outside the city. We'd like to change that. I've personally lived in the city since 2004, and selfishly want a shorter commute. We have quite a few employees in the area as well, and we're looking to consolidate them under one roof here in Kerrville. We're a third-generation family business. We are long-term owners and operators. We're not speculators. We're from here. We go to church here. We have to shop on Sunday afternoon at the H-E-B here, and we want to do something that's not going to get us yelled at. So we're very much excited to be part of this community and looking forward to this project. We do own and manage more than 3,500 units throughout Texas, including 1,200 in the Hill Country area, which is Kerr County and contiguous counties. And we have more than 130 employees in our company, including 30 here in Kerr County. And there's just our website address for any additional information about us, photos of past projects. So with that, I think that concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer questions, or I can let any members of the public come up and then answer questions after that.
Okay, do we have anyone else to speak to this? All right, then we will go to the council and discussion. Do you have any questions of Mr. Paxton or Mr. McDonald?
While he's up there, let me go start with asking him. So, a couple things. All said and done, how many units residential are you projecting in that what you just showed us?
We're projecting roughly 240 units of apartments, and then again 36 to 50 townhome units.
Okay, and the development life cycle you're projecting is what for the total thing?
I believe it'll be about probably 5 to 8 years. It'll depend obviously on economic conditions after we start. You know, if the apartments lease up quickly, then we'll build the second phase quickly. If they lease up slowly, then we'll probably take more time. Likewise on the townhomes, you know, we're not going to develop all of them at one time. We're going to, you know, as they pre-sell, then we will start developing them out. So that'll be market driven for the most part, but our estimate is 5 to 8 years.
But you're still looking at doing those apartments first. That's your phase one or whatever you want to call it.
Correct. So the first things that will be built there are, again, our corporate headquarters, and then the first phase of apartments. And those will be going on basically simultaneously.
And when we say luxury apartments, what are we talking as far as a rent thing? Did you say $1.25 a square foot?
Average will be about $1.25 a square foot.
Okay. That's all I have for it.
All right, any other questions?
I have a couple questions, Mayor.
Okay.
Can you bring that map back, because we didn't get that plat, I don't think.
No, sir.
The-
Plats
okay.
go to P&Z, not the council.
Okay, we have one on here, it says preliminary plat revised, and I think that was supposed to be the one, but we have the old one.
I'll let him speak to
Right.
that.
So the original preliminary plat that went to the planning commission had,
That's the one we got.
correct,
Yeah.
has this road coming straight through. They have revised that to come up and created separation between these two lots to accommodate the adjacent property owners as they've gone through those negotiations.
Okay. And will lot 900, 901, 902 be dedicated to the city or just 903?
I'm not able
I
to
just
see
wonder,
that. Let me
it's like
come
that,
over.
it's the green space, open space, that big strip running down the middle and along the river. Is the city gonna
This is,
maintain that, or
correct
is
me
that?
if I'm wrong, this is the area looking to be dedicated as a park.
Okay.
That
This
is
will
correct.
be-
The remainder will be common area. Although, again, we have been in discussions, it's very preliminary, but staff has asked us if we would be willing at some point to dedicate a river trail easement through this lot, and we are very much willing to do that, but at least for the foreseeable future, until that were to happen, then that'll be just common area through the development, as will this green space that runs through the middle here, which will also convey drainage from Thompson Drive down to the river as it currently runs.
Okay.
Will there be an HOA involved with the residential?
Yes, there will be a property owner that will be involved in order to maintain
Okay.
those.
And we'll have to
common
wait a
areas.
while for restaurants. That'll be the last that will go in?
Well, we're certainly going to start marketing those as soon as possible. We've had a few nibbles on the bait. It's a little early yet because we're going through the annexation and the utility construction and all that. But we have had some preliminary interest from what we think would be some good restaurant tenants that would be able to take advantage of the river. And so we're definitely going to be pursuing that. And it's entirely possible that those could start going, you know, just as soon as the other items. We're certainly not going to hold them back if we get somebody who's interested.
I was curious, your footprints or your floor plans for the luxury townhomes.
Mhm.
Do you have 2 or 3 or 1, or, and what would that be? I'm curious.
We don't have those in place yet,
Okay.
because a lot of it is we want to be able to customize those, at least within the footprints, for the residents, the buyers. We have kind of some preliminary floor plans. The photos that I showed you of the property in Fredericksburg, those are around 1,100 to 1,300 square feet. And they're 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and 3-bedroom, 2-bath units. We would probably stick pretty close to that, but
Okay.
again, that's kind of a little further off into the future.
Given the wishes of folks in Kerrville and Cook County, can you put a Target store in here?
I'll be happy to discuss that with the land development folks at Target, absolutely. No, it's, while I say that tongue in cheek, and we do have 4 retail slots up on Thompson Drive, which I didn't really cover. Our vision for those retail slots is not big box or medium box, nationwide chain retailers, but rather, again, something that reflects more the local character of Kerrville. So, I guess theoretically anything's for sale for the right price. That would not be our primary target.
Yeah.
Unintended.
Okay, two more real quick
All right.
questions. One was the townhomes, those are gonna be private owners, or is that rentals too?
It would be our plan to build and sell those at this
Okay.
time.
And then the other, I guess, is more of a Drew question, but I didn't look at all this stuff, so I'm just assuming that the annexation boundary got modified to wherever that chain link fence is, correct?
That's
So
correct.
That's what we're adopting here?
That's
Like
correct.
the acreage
At the
change?
scale of the map, you can't see
Okay,
that
yeah,
adjustment.
okay. All right.
I have one more question, Mayor. How are we providing sewer out there? I've asked this before. Are we gonna follow as far as the city, are we doing wastewater master plan? Are we doing something different?
I think they're looking at it now. Do you want to comment on that, Justin?
Sure, I'll be happy to. We have been working with city staff now for actually over a year, designing sewer plans that would build a force main out to one corner of our property, and then would allow tie-ins at that corner from conceivably anybody else that wants to get to it. We have, at staff's request, been working with our engineering team to see about how much more it would cost to relocate that lift station down closer to the water treatment center, and therefore potentially allow more users to tie on, but we don't have those estimates back yet.
Okay,
But
that would
we-
be my concern, is that we want that area to grow. And I only know of one case in Kerrville that we allowed someone to tap into a force main. I think that's temporary. So if we can avoid that, or if we allow that, that's something we need to look into.
Sure, we're happy to work with the city staff and have been working with the engineering and the public works staff to get that design, and we're happy to continue doing so.
All right. Do I hear a motion regarding ordinance number 2018-23?
I move that we accept ordinance number 2018-25.
23?
23, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Here we go. Annexing an approximate 59.09 acre tract of land.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and second. All in favor of that motion, if you'd let it be known by the raised hand. And it passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just like to thank you guys again for working with your neighbors. At least on the outside, it looks like you have done a great job, and I think they have reciprocated, and thank you for that.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, we move to another public hearing, 5B, at 6:44. And I should note that the last one we concluded at 6:35. Okay. Ms. Brown, if you will read the item into the record.
Ordinance number 2018-25, annexing an approximate 5.335 acre tract of land out of the William Watt Survey number 65, abstract number 364, into the corporate limits of the City of Kerrville, Texas, said tract being located within Kerr County, Texas, and the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Kerrville, Texas, and generally located adjacent to property within the Comanche Trace residential subdivision, which is located along State Highway 173, further describing the property to be annexed, adopting a service plan for the property annexed, establishing the zoning for the property annexed, and making findings.
Okay, Mr. Paxton?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a little over 5-acre tract of land, is zone PD. There are 2 different size housing types on this tract of land. Another continuation of Comanche Trace. I'd be pleased to answer any questions after the public hearing.
All right. Okay, thank you. Anyone to speak to that? If not, close the public hearing. And council, it's 6:45 to close the public hearing. Comments, questions?
I have a few, Mayor.
Yeah.
I still don't understand why we're allowing the donut hole. What's the reasoning that the city would want to go allow that?
That was part of their petition request, looking at just the preliminary plat, the way they phased their annexations through preliminary plats. Excuse me, Martin, if you go back to the map.
Well, my concern is if we don't annex this now, the donut hole, there'll never be a reason to annex it.
And we are talking with Comanche Trace and their ownership to look at future annexation of the balance of their property and through that. This is also, sorry, this map's a little small, but shows all the annexations of Comanche Trace. On the other side of Phase 13, this section here is also more or less a donut hole, part of the golf course. The small area here behind Phase 15 we're looking at tonight is open space for the neighborhood.
So we can prevent this from being a donut hole by requiring them to annex it?
Possibly. That's one thing we're in discussions with.
Is there any other cases in Kerrville that we do the donut holes, or is it just,
There are several.
what are the reasons there?
I don't have that history.
Don't know.
Right, there's several examples, but we are like trying to avoid this, are we not?
That is correct.
So I think what he's asking is, why are we varying our policy and not avoiding this one? We don't have an answer, right?
Don't have an answer. No, that was part of their request.
No, I got another question. I think we already emailed back and forth on this. As far as the meets and bounds, they're not signed and sealed by a surveyor, but we're going to follow those meets and bounds for our annexation.
Those meets and bounds came from the preliminary plat, which based on the 1999 development agreement is what triggers the annexation. So we do have those meets and bounds with the preliminary plat file. And yes, that is the meets and bounds we're following for this.
But they're not signed and sealed. I would just feel more comfortable. Thompson Drive project has meets and bounds that are signed and sealed.
Right.
I just don't understand why this one's not.
Okay.
It's just not a requirement from
It's
the
not a
city.
requirement by our code.
What would be
Okay,
the
so your understanding is they're going to proceed with annexation, the other annexations?
We've been talking with them about their future plans for the rest of the development, because they have much larger acreage outside of this. We haven't looked specifically at this small donut hole, the one adjacent for the golf course, but we started those conversations.
Okay, all right. Do we have any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion in regard to ordinance number 2018-25?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we accept ordinance number 2018-25 to annex, what is it?
Yeah.
Let's see, 5.335 acres
Right.
of Comanche Trace.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'd like to say something, Mayor. I really wish we could have the donut hole annexed with this piece of property. I don't see much of a negative impact doing it, and I think that's the right way to do it.
Okay.
I was saying, Mr. Mayor, that at this point in the process, to start over, we're encompassing a larger area, which means we have to go back to the process entirely. And it's already been through here, this is the 4th time, so then we have to start all over again. But I hear what you're saying.
Well, if we start over, at least we're doing it, in my opinion, the right way. I think this is not the correct way to do it, but that's just my opinion.
Well, and I understand, and I appreciate that, but I would tell you that it's our intention to address that with the developer, to make sure that we take that in as well as any other donut holes. And as Drew has mentioned, we're already outlining a process for our next development agreement, and it's on the list of one of the things that we need to address.
But there's no guarantee that they will annex it.
Well, I think in our development agreement that they have to, if we request that they do at some point.
Well, voluntary, they wouldn't.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the city has the ability to annex that property, any donut hole property, should the city desire to. So they are not required to petition for annexation of the donut hole, but the city has the ability to annex that donut hole. So it really would be the cost and expense of who goes through that process.
Then I would say, assuming we pass this motion, that it's communicated to staff and to Comanche Trace that there is concern about this issue.
Well,
All right.
Okay. I would like to see more than that. We actually go ahead and try to annex it. We have a chance to solve a problem right now. It's a donut hole, and I think we should do that.
Okay. I hear you, but procedurally, it's pretty tough, and I think, Mr. Buckle, given the objections you've raised, that they've been heard by staff, and they're gonna be heard by Comanche Trace and others. I think we're gonna find a way through it.
Okay, and I'm gonna say one little thing. Basically, he's been raising this particular issue for a little while, and to the city manager's point, we just got done doing something that would have solved this problem for what he's talking about with the McDonald's property. We modified the boundary all the way up until today's vote. We could have actually done that with this. We didn't do that. He's been raising these objections, so I'm guessing his concern is that the objections are being heard, or are not being heard. So anyways, we've got a motion in a second.
Actually, if I could point out, that the difference is that the McDonald's shrunk their boundaries, okay? Whereas this would be increasing them, and so you're not gonna meet your notice requirements for a larger area. So that's the difference. And you know, the other thing that to kind of take into consideration is that holds the developer up for 60, 90 days to go back through the process. And so you're not seeing that development occur during that, you're holding up the development for that period of time.
But they raised the same issue at the P&Z meeting when they passed it. So we've known about this and haven't addressed it since at least prior to that.
That was after council adopted or accepted the petition.
Maybe so, but I'm
So
saying,
that- at that
and that
point,
was
the
delayed.
process had
All I'm
already been
saying is
started.
that was months ago. We could have,
Correct.
we had delays that were, you know, not part of this anyway. So we could have, as he's saying, fixed something when it was in front of us. We chose not to. Motion and seconds out there.
Yeah, motion seconds out there. But again, when you have someone like Mr. Buckle, who's a surveyor and understands these things in the way that he does, given his vocation, I think it needs to be heeded. Okay, all in favor of the recommendation to adopt the ordinance number 2018-25? Let it be known by the raised hand. All right, 4 opposed, 1. So it's 4-1, passes. Okay, we go to 5C at 6:54. And Ms. Brown, would you read that in?
Ordinance number 2018-26, an ordinance annexing an approximate 3.669 acre tract of land out of the J.D. Level Survey number 1862, abstract number 1435, into the corporate limits of the City of Kerrville, Texas, said tract being located within Kirk County, Texas, and the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Kerrville, Texas, and addressed as 884 Farm to Market Road 783, Harper Road, further describing the property to be annexed, adopting a service plan for the property annexed, and establishing the zoning for the property annexed.
Okay, Mr. Paxton?
Thank you, Mayor. This is 884 Farmer Market Road 783, petition annexation into the city limits. Again, this is the fourth time that we've discussed this one, similar tract as the others. Be pleased to answer any questions after the public hearing.
Okay. Anyone else to speak? Okay. Out of the public hearing, council, and for clarification, this is the AgPro property on Harper Road. The old, I shouldn't know this, the old Longhorn Saloon.
No,
Okay.
you shouldn't.
Okay, any questions on this one? Okay. Do I hear a motion regarding this property?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2018-26, annexing the approximate 3.669 acre tract of land.
All right. Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Bokel? We ready to go? Okay. All in favor of this motion, if you let me know by the raised hand. Okay. Okay. 5D is the next item in the public hearing, and we enter that at 6:56. Ms. Brown, would you read that for us?
Ordinance number 2018-27, an ordinance annexing approximate 0.885 acre tract of land, a portion being out of the Jesus Hernandez Survey, number 548, abstract number 189, and another part being out of MK and TERY Company Survey number 1862, abstract number 1435, into the corporate limits of the City of Kerrville, Texas, said tract being located within Kerr County, Texas, and the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Kerrville, Texas, and addressed as 874 Farm to Market Road 783, Harper Road, further describing the property to be annexed, adopting a service plan for the property annexed, and establishing the zoning for the property annexed.
Okay, one correction, I think it's 884 Farm to Market Road, is that right?
This is 874. The previous one was 884.
Okay, got you.
With that, this is just under an acre at 874 Farm to Market Road 783. Same timeline. This is the fourth time we've had this before council. Be pleased to answer any questions after the public hearing.
All right, anyone speak to this? All right, then we will go out of public hearing. And council, comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept ordinance number 2018-27, annexing an approximate 0.885 acre tract of land.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second. All of those in favor of that motion, please let me know by the raised hand. Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, here's another one. And at 6:58, we look at ordinance number 2018-28. If you'll read that for us.
Ordinance number 2018-28, an ordinance amending the city's zoning code by changing the zoning district for an approximate 0.28 acre tract of land, said tract being part of a 7.964 acre tract generally located in the 300 block of Holsworth Drive, north of the intersection of Holsworth Drive and Norfolk Lane, and within the City of Kerrville, Kerr County, Texas, by removing the area from a residential cluster district, RC, and placing it within the 24-N zoning district, containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, providing for a maximum penalty or fine of $2,000, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject.
All right. Mr. Paxton?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a zone change at roughly the 300 block of Holdsworth Drive, which is this parcel here just west of Norfolk Lane, excuse me. This is part of the Kerrville 2050 Catalyst Area number 5, which focuses on the sports complex, Holdsworth Drive and Harper Road out to I-10. The allowable place types in this area include different types of residential, community commercial, and regional commercial. And this request is for 24N, and would be a community commercial for a barber shop.
Oh, okay, okay. All right. Do we have anyone to speak to this? Okay. If not, we've got a public hearing, and we, council, comments, questions.
I was just curious again about the size of the building, the footprint on the site, and the parking that would be available, and
There's-
capacity for customers, that type of thing.
Right now, they're still working through some of their design phase. It will be a fairly small building. About 1,500 square feet. About 1,500 square feet. As we go through that permitting process, they'll have adequate parking according to the zone code.
And I have some questions. At 1,500 square feet, about how many clients would that allow at one time?
Yeah, if you'll come, yeah, thank you.
My name's Louis Sanchez. I live at 1605 Newton Street, Kerrville, Texas. We would like to have at least 3 chairs and maybe as many as 5. That would, we plan to have 7 to 14 parking spots is what we'd like to do. I think we have room for it, and we should be able to accommodate most of our customers or all of our customers.
Another question, and this kind of has to do with that whole area there. There'd be a driveway off of Holdsworth into the parking area.
Yes, ma'am.
The land behind there, the other part of the 7 acres, is that something that you're going to develop, do something with, or is this the only part that you're planning to erect, is just this building?
I have no plans for the rest of the property. My only plan is to build a new barber shop on the front there on the 0.28 acres.
Okay. And then, I guess this may be for Drew, as far as other establishments, other commercial along there, what do we do about too many coming in and off of Holdsworth?
That's one thing we're working with the engineering department on. There is also a storm drain near this frontage that they'll have to work around. They've reached out to the adjacent property owner, or are going to reach out to the adjacent property owner to see if there's any appetite for a shared drive, so that we can limit the number of curb cuts along Holdsworth Drive.
Is there any restrictions? Is there, that it can only be so many, or?
We do have a few restrictions, but most of it's going to be based on the topography. Excuse me. Can't really see it in this photograph. Within a couple 100 feet of this property begins a retaining wall along Holdsworth
Yes,
Drive.
yes.
So obviously we wouldn't have any curb cuts for that length of Holdsworth Drive on this side of the road. But then picking back up where that comes back to grade with the street.
Okay.
I have a couple questions, Mayor.
Okay.
Kind of confused here. Is we already kind of talked about this, Drew. Is the 0.28 acres a separate tract out of the 7.964, or are we going to rezone a portion of a lot?
Rezoning a portion of the lot. After the zone case, they're already working with their surveyor to do a preliminary plat, or a plat to subdivide the property into 2
Okay.
lots,
And as far as, is it 80 feet of frontage?
roughly.
So how are you going to provide access to the rest of the acreage?
We've been talking about that, whether we need to create a flag lot off the back or an access easement through this lot to the back.
Is there any
again,
other access to the 7 acres? Is there anything on top of the hill that comes down, or is it just here off Holdsworth?
As of right now, it would just be off of
Just off
Holdsworth. It backs up to private property on the north and west.
That's going to be a requirement to plat.
Yes, it will be.
Then, the garden homes, have you visited with the owner of that development, or?
We sent notice, as you can see by this map, to several of those owners, and we did not get any replies back.
Response?
I'm sorry, just to clarify, on the rezoning part, that will be subdivided, that will be its own tract?
Yes,
Okay.
it will be its own tract.
All right, what is your pleasure in regard to this ordinance, number 2018-28?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2018-28 on this first reading.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, got a second, a motion second, Mr. Baruti seconded. All right, all in favor, if you'd let it be known by the raised hand. Okay. I want to know one thing, have you ever cut hair before?
With a license, yes, sir. 46 years, 4 months and a day.
46 years, 4 months, and a day.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Wow. All right.
Got me a little calendar with this X's on it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had to go back and.
Right,
But,
okay, all right.
All the best.
I just want to say this, then we're going to recess, move to another item of business. But I feel like we need to do something to make this city council meeting more exciting to the scouts who have come tonight. But I don't know what that may be. Scott, you got any ideas? Okay, all right. All right. City council is in recess. And
Mayor, before you get to, are you gonna go to 7A right now?
yeah,
I'm gonna need to recuse myself. I talked to the city attorney and he said continue.
okay, all right. City attorney is not here tonight because his plane was delayed coming back.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
It's gonna be the same thing.
Okay. Good. The consideration of possible action, introduction of project and financing plan for reinvestment zone number 1 of downtown Kerrville. I'm going to ask the city manager to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the two-step of what Mr. Pettit's been calling the two-step process. And so second step is to create or approve the project and financing plan since the TERS has now been created. The project and financing plan that's before you is exactly the one that you saw as part of the creation ordinance as the preliminary plan. It's fairly general in nature because it's private sector driven, and we really don't have a crystal ball about what will be coming to us. It's very flexible in as far as its ability to be amended as time goes on. But I'm asking David Pettit to come forward, who's been working with us on this project. He's got a very brief presentation for this item. David?
Thank you, Chairman and members of the board of TERS number 1. I'm just happy to be here. It was planes, trains, and automobiles. I was coming down from Fort Worth, and rain prevented me, like I think your city attorney, from making my flight. So I just made it audible and drove. So I'm happy to be here. So thank you very much for having me. But I have a very brief presentation and be happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Wanted to just go over our prior briefings about the TERS that was approved on the 25th, the project and financing plan that the city manager just outlined. Talk about some of the flexibility that we have in that with the statutory funding categories, and then the ability of the TERS board and the city council to amend the project and financing plan, and also the next steps in moving forward. So I think I need to get a place here. I really, really enjoy this city, and I enjoy the drive down here. I started to really worry about my daughter for whatever reason, because you get to thinking a lot when you're driving down here. But I've really enjoyed my time down here. And just to highlight some of that time is we had a stakeholders meeting in March. We had a June 12th city council briefing, and also a TERS workshop
and the first and second reading, with the second reading being on the 25th. So the TERS that was created on the 25th, the goal is to fund needed public infrastructure and encourage private development that will yield additional tax revenue to all taxing jurisdictions. Because we did this year, the base year, as we kind of freeze those taxes and any increment occurs, is 2018. We have a 30-year term with the city participation being at 100%. So is that Texas two-step or the two-step process that we talk about. After the creation ordinance, the project and financing plan is recommended by the TERS board to the city council for approval. So the city council approval of the project and financing plan is by separate ordinance. So after we conclude this meeting, if you do decide to proceed with recommending the project and financing plan, I like to say that it's the roadmap. And I wanted to go into a little bit of detail that the city manager talked about kind of being a plan. So our scheduled considerations, of course, are the TERS board that we're in now to consider the project and financing plan in the first reading, and then also the second reading. Now, what I like to say is this is an adaptable roadmap. The project and financing plan has been prepared to afford the authority to fund projects per the requirements of Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code. The project plan provides funding categories to meet demands as specific projects evolve. Each project will have specific needs that will need to be fully evaluated and approved by the TERS board and the city council. No project and financing plan can predict the future. I think I've said that several times. It's kind of hard to have a crystal ball for 30 years. But the proposed project and financing plan provides flexibility through statutory categories to meet future demands. In my 25 years of experience, I don't have it down to the day or month or hour, but about 25 years worth of putting together TERS agreements and project and financing plans. Plans without flexibility in the marketplace have had limited success given the inevitable changes in the marketplace. So this is really to be responsive to the market and then ultimately give you, the city, the TERS board and the city council, the ability to adapt. There's procedures within the statute, Chapter 311.011E of the tax code says that any time after the zone is adopted, the board of directors may adopt an amendment to the project plan. So anytime in the future, you can amend this project and financing plan. And that takes effect on the approval of the change by the ordinance of the city council or the county that created the zone. And in certain cases, if you're like increasing the dollar amount, it would require a public hearing. But if you're just changing or adding additional categories, that would not. So you have the ability at any time as a TERS board to make amendments. But we think with the project and financing plan that we put together, which anticipated commercial development consisting of retail, office, as well as residential development, this covers everything that's within the statute. And what I like to tell a lot of my clients, this provides you with a menu of categories to choose from that are appropriate to fund the specific projects that come forward. And as you make the determination whether they're eligible and worthwhile for funding, you have essentially a menu that I can't imagine that you don't have the ability, if you wish to fund the project, the category to fund that. The way we like to treat this is that the $17 million is a cap, but savings from one line item may be applied to a cost increase in another line item. So basically, these are categories, and we just stick to that $17 million cap as not to handcuff the TIF board and the city council. What we have found with those plans that are very rigid and saying we'll only spend this so much on roads, so much on wastewater, we don't know what those future needs are going to be. And we would hope that there will be changes in the marketplace as a result of this plan. And so this gives the ultimate authority to the TERS board and to the city council. As far as the TERS board as you're meeting here today, will meet as needed to evaluate funding requests as they come forward. We will need the TERS board to meet annually per the statute on the 150th day following the end of the fiscal year of the municipality. A report of the status of the zone must be prepared. The report must include the amount and source of revenue in the tax increment fund, the amount and purpose of expenditures from the fund, tax increment base and the current captured appraised value retained by the zone, the captured appraised value shared by the municipality or county and other taxing units, and the total amount of tax increment received. And then you also shall send a copy of that to the comptroller. I think I've mentioned in the past there's 313 of these, but a lot of TERS that have been created throughout the state don't complete that last one. So I like to think that number is a little bit low, but there are 313 registered with the Texas Comptroller's Office. So moving forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions, we have the first reading of the project and financing plan ordinance, and then on the 23rd we have scheduled the second reading of the project and financing plan ordinance. And to be determined as the need arises, we have the TERS board meetings, meeting at a minimum annually for the annual report and prepare a budget. So just as your revenues come in from on July 25th, where you get your 98% certified roll, we will have an idea about what kind of increments coming into the TERS, and we can therefore make budgeted forecast of how much money is going to be into the fund. And therefore, we would like to go ahead and at that time make proposed budgets of what money would be in the TERS, and then look at any prospective projects that would be going there. And of course, meet as needed as to consider funding requests. One of the ways that projects can be funded is, although they might not show up on that July 25th certified roll, if you know somebody's coming in and they're spending $2 million, we can know with certainty, to a certain level, the amount of revenue they're going to generate. And so you can enter into a development agreement that says, if you produce that, it's performance-based. If you produce that amount of increment to the TERS, we can make that eligible through one of those funding categories. So we don't have to rely on just what's on the ground today. We can make contingent contracts to really encourage development to occur based upon future tax values. But once again, there's no risk, because if there's no development, there's no revenue. And so they're the ones taking the risk. And so and the purpose of the TERS board is to recommend projects for approval to the city council. So once again, the mother may I, as I've mentioned before, is coming to really the city staff working through the process, getting to the TERS board, and then coming and the TERS board making recommendations to the city council for final approval. And those would be through development agreements that would be approved by resolution. So happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right. Do you have questions at this point?
I do, Mr. Mayor. You have mentioned that entities don't report to the comptroller. Why? I thought that would be a requirement. I'm curious.
I wish I had an answer for that. I work for a lot of cities, and for some reason they just seem to fall through the cracks and don't do their compliance and their reporting. And so the comptroller doesn't
No
have
penalties?
it. There's no TIF police, if you will, to say, hey, you haven't turned in your report, and there's no specific damages for not turning in your report. You might get a heated call from the comptroller, but I like to remind all my clients that they do need to comply within 150 days of the municipality.
Okay.
But I throw that out there because I do believe that number is low compared to the number of TIFs that I see that are on the comptroller's list and the amount of TIFs that I've worked on. But I think that is a reflection probably of city management as well, and their level of detail.
One other question. At what point would you recommend that we expand the board of directors? Dollar-wise, time-wise, projects? Is there some, because I feel that eventually, not right now probably, but the board does need to be expanded. And but is there some guidelines as to the
There's
when?
no magical formula. I think it's once you're comfortable with who should be those representatives. We can do that through a number of different mechanisms. I need to talk with the city attorney, but I would typically make a quick amendment to the creation ordinance. The creation ordinance created and designated y'all as the TERS board. And so if we were to expand that, we would just make a simple amendment to that creation ordinance that would add those additional people to the TERS board. But there's no magical formula. I think it's just when you're comfortable with who those people should be and how actively they are involved. As I've seen, city staff does a pretty good job of thoroughly vetting these projects before they come to the TERS board. And so I think it's having the level of expertise on the TERS board to sometimes review some of those projects is very helpful, because otherwise it's just city staff and maybe the city attorney that are reviewing those things. And then ultimately is a good policy from the city council's point of view.
Councilman, if I could also comment on that. So just looking forward, timeline, we'll get our preliminary roll in May timeframe. So we'll have an idea about what the first increment is. And I think that that would be a good time to reconvene. And if you all at that time wanted to appoint additional members, you could do that as well. The only caveat to that would be that if we had a project come forward in the meantime, and you all felt strongly about adding other members, you could do that at that time. But right now, there's no increment.
Yeah.
I would add to it that we should probably look at it sooner rather than later, because it's kind of silly that we have a 5-member board who's going to recuse, so we're really at 4. We ought to kind of address that. Anyway.
In regard to public discussion, we're going to wait till the next item, but anything else?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Ms. Eichner has said, is that I've had a lot of public input and questions and concerns, and so I want to make sure that we have a vehicle which we can listen and hear and take in all the suggestions and ideas that we might have from these downtown owners as well as surrounding areas. So there may be a way we work as a council to do workshops. What have other cities done that to make sure they're either getting words out when there is something to announce? Or
A couple of things on that note. One is I think that your web portal is a great access, that we have a TERS in place. If you're looking to do business in downtown, a TIF is something to look for, and to see if it's consistent with your strategic plan. Also, engaging your downtown property owners and those potential investors. I think in some of the previous, the last second public reading that we had for the creation ordinance, there's several people that were interested. I think that it really kind of snowballs at a certain point, but I think at a very minimum, getting it on the city's portal, and then having the right people on the board. One thing I do want to caution on the board is you want to make sure that I had been on a board before to where the property owner owned about 90% of the downtown, so they were conflicted every time they voted. So it's very important that you have the people that you choose and you go forward. So as the city manager mentioned, right now we just have the base year, which is January 1 of 2018. January 1 of 2019 is that snapshot. So we'll get those preliminary values in May. So we'll have an idea of what kind of increment, if any, we have. And I think that's an appropriate time to start talking about the TERS board. But I think in the interim, any type of educational pieces that we've had, and then any type of outlets that we can use through the chamber, those have been, it basically just becomes part of the toolkit as you have new development. And I know that there's several other things I'm forgetting, but I think those are the very good places to start.
we've had those ideas, and I appreciate it, because I think we will try to continue to be open to the public with questions. And, you're right, until May, we don't have an increment, but we still have ideas that are percolating and coming to us, so.
Well, and as I mentioned before, just because you don't have an increment doesn't mean you can't do a project. And I can't emphasize that enough, is that a lot of the projects I work on, so I did a hotel project that it was an AC Marriott, and it was $70 million, and we paid for the electrical electrical vaults because there was a triple redundancy. That was all based upon projections of what that $70 million was going to come on 3 years from now. So it said if you pull a building permit within 12 months and you get a certificate of obligation within 24 months, we will enter into a development agreement to reimburse you from the revenue that you generate to the TERS. So you can do those projects immediately. And so, but I think as the city manager talked about, until I think they see some base value that's kind of there, May is probably your best time frame.
Thank you.
I got a couple of questions. So, one, you were here at the meeting, so one of the big issues during the TERS creation discussion
Yes, sir.
was, a lot of people wanted to see, me included, a project plan before we created the TERS. And at that time, we were told, well, it's coming, and we'll get it later. So imagine our surprise when what we discover is the preliminary project plan is the project plan. So I understand flexibility, but shouldn't we be, I thought the code said we're supposed to do in the financing plan something that explains sort of an annual or when the costs will be incurred or when we're guessing. Okay, I understand it's crystal ball stuff, but what's the harm in throwing it out there so that we have a general idea of what we think is happening, both on the revenue side and the expense side? Putting out a vision, because it's all flexible. Those categories you described they're not hard and fast anything, right? They're just suggestions, right? We don't even have to do an amendment of any kind to pull from one category to the other, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so what's the harm in putting out a more detailed guess of a project plan so that people can see it?
So we prepared a project increment analysis with basically the overall development, which is included in here. That talks about the overall future development.
Like anticipated development.
Anticipated development.
Right.
What projects, and as a TERS administrator, the best type of project is one that comes to you and doesn't ask for money, because that money just goes into the TERS so you can use it somewhere else.
Right.
I have found that those exercises have not seen any accuracy, because nobody can really predict what's going to happen unless you have projects that you know for certain are going to happen. And then you have to know for certain that you're going to give them incentives. And if you don't know that for certain, you're making assumptions that basically are just on paper. And so we have found, and like I said, I think in December of last year, we created 24 TIFs, and we're on track right now to do about 15. And they all follow this format, because the detailed format are once again trying to predict who's going to be asking for money, who's not, how much we're going to be giving, and what's the investment they're going to be making. And so we kind of leave that to the marketplace and respond to the marketplace. And so I understand what you're saying, but it's extremely difficult just to predict what the development needs in size and what their gap is going to be as they come forward, and that's a negotiation in itself.
Right.
And so if you almost put it like in there, somebody could say, hey, you already had me down this parcel right here for a hotel that you're going to give X amount of dollars, and a lot of people will hang their hat on. But it's just a piece of paper, mind you, and it still has to go through the two-step process, but it just complicates things a little bit more than the process that we're kind of proposing.
Right, and I get all of that, but two things. One, you brought up that anticipated project plan, and we're still showing it as 20 years. And because originally we were going to do a 20-year TERS. We're now doing a 30-year. So we're looking at an anticipated project that only covers 20 years.
And it's 30.
It's showing a 0 to 10 and then 10 to 20 in two groupings.
That's not correct. Those are the two. So those are the two assumptions. It's growth from 20 to 30.
Okay, I'm
So if
looking
you
at
look
in
at
our
the
packet.
schedules, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but if you look at the schedules, they go a full 30 years.
Yeah, I know that some of the schedules, but I looked at something that gave us the retail office and whatever. It's a green and yellow.
Those are the inputs.
Right,
And so
those are only go for 20 years. What I'm looking at.
And my point to that is that I can only predict up to 20 years. Beyond that, it's just a growth of what's coming on the ground in those 20 years.
So we're not.
But it's still a
expecting-
30-year term.
Okay, but we're not expecting more growth in the 20 to 30-year thing, is that what you're saying? We're not projecting it?
I think we have significant growth within the first 20 years.
Right, we do. I'm not questioning that, but anyways,
So it's not a 20-year TIF, it's
no, I
not
know.
projected
I'm
on
not
that.
suggesting it is.
Okay.
I'm just saying, we put out some information in our packet that shows a breakdown of the first 20 years. We do not talk about the project breakdown in retail, hotel, residential, and what is it, office? That's projected for us in the first 20 years.
Correct.
We don't show anything for 20 to 30, 21 to 30. We just don't show it. So we can talk about that later. It's not as important of a fact. But the other thing is, you're talking about it's difficult to project. So put yourself in our seat here. It's very difficult to explain to the public what a TERS is when we have such a vague project plan. It would be nice to see it somewhat more specific so that people have a better footing of what's going on. Because right now, we got to sell this to the people, and it's difficult.
I understand what you're saying. I'm saying common practice is that you can't get any more specific than what we've done.
Here, let me say, we need to is there any public discussion at this point? Okay, then we need to move to Part B of this, consider and act upon the project and financing plan, reinvestment zone number 1, downtown Kerrville TERS. And before you read that, Ms. Brown, I guess I'm concerned about these scouts. Can they get their merit badge by having attended an hour and a half of city council? And they can go home and finish their homework?
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, whoa, algebra test? Yeah. So, anyway, I'm going to dismiss the scouts and the parents with them at this point, but thank you for being here.
yes,
Thank you for coming.
All right, okay.
And
Okay.
good luck in algebra.
You're welcome.
Good, good,
Come
good.
back. Come on
All right,
back.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have fun with
Okay,
algebra.
Ms. Brown, would you read the agenda item?
Item number B, consider and act upon project and financing plan reinvestment zone number 1, downtown Kerrville TERS.
Okay, council, do you have any questions or comments? And I'm going to start with Ms. Sigerman over here, and then we'll go across.
Well, I've had some of my own personal ideas I've shared with the city manager about just how we can continue to have an open communication with the public regarding their questions and concerns and feedback, and we're working hard as it is just to make sure we have all of our facts in play. And I wish we had a crystal ball, because it would be nice to be able to say we need 8% versus 10% for water and sewer, whatever. It would be nice, but we can't. So we're going to have to just hope that we can share when we need to. When we have a shortage in one and we have more of a need in another area, that's what we'll do. We'll shift the percentages to cover the needs of the city. And so that's basically my thoughts on this TERS. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be a win-win for the city, and we're going to work hard to make it that way.
And I would add that, so we're talking about cost. Without the development, there's not the revenue. So you know that slide that I put up before, that you have two ways of creating revenue: new development and through appreciation of those existing property values. So getting that new development, encouraging that new development, that's going to require the work of everybody.
Right.
In order to have that increment, because those are just numbers on paper at this point for $17 million. So if nothing occurs, we're not going to have that increment.
Right.
All right. Zach?
I don't have any questions. I just think that our motivation is the future of our city, and I think that as time goes on, we're going to see these things fall into place. And I think we just need to trust that it's going to happen.
I'm hearing some very positive comments from downtown merchants, and appreciation, and that's been very good. But I just want to pin you down on one thing.
Sure.
So you mentioned earlier a $70 million Marriott project, and you can guarantee that for us?
We have to-
That was an example in another TIF, but it was an AC Marriott done by Jackson Shaw. And we were able to pay for their public infrastructure in order to come in, and that was about 300 rooms. And what we can do is if somebody comes to you with a hotel project, we can work with staff and know that, okay, if they start construction within 12 months, that within 24 months, we know what the value of that's going to be. Because one, we know what they're going to spend on it. Number two, we'll probably be pretty conservative on the estimates, so we'll have revenue. So the TERS could enter into an agreement with that developer that says, if you do pursuant to these agreements, the performance agreements, we will have increment to be able to pay you back to offset either through economic development, water, sewer, infrastructure, whatever it might be, we have that revenue stream. So even though we don't have that increment in May, we can work with projects as they move forward and project on when they come online from a building permit and a certificate of occupancy standpoint. So yes, I do believe that there's a number of smaller hotels that would be ripe for Kerrville. Can I promise you when? Probably the city management knows better and the planning department knows better. But as they move forward, we can work with them on what those increments would be. So, happy to do that.
Hey, he's here.
Yay.
There we go. Somebody's gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
I could have given you a ride, you know?
Yeah,
I was
well,
in Dallas earlier today.
we are now legal. So, all right. Other comments or questions?
Yeah, I got my one little, like a
Okay.
first shot, right? Okay, so, you know, I'm just a little disappointed in the detail of what we're seeing. I fully expected it to be kind of what the code said. The reinvestment zone plan must include a detailed list describing the estimated project cost of the zone. I don't find the 7 or 8 categories as detailed as I expected. A statement listing the proposed kind, number, and location of all public works or public improvements. I get the whole concept of flexibility. I think that's baked in to the fact that whatever we write down is so easily modified that it's flexible. So I would have liked to have seen something that was a lot more detailed and something I could actually take to the people and say, this is the vision of what we're trying to do. Because that's what I've been telling people is what this was about. And so basically, for those reasons, I'm not going to be able to recommend this up to ourselves on council. But anyway, so that's
All right. Do I hear a motion on 2B?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance, okay.
The project and financing plan?
Was it 2018?
no, it's not an ordinance. All we're doing here is recommending.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm looking for my wording so I say this the right way. So, where is it? Let me get it. It's not 2018-24?
No, recommending the project and financing plan
make a
reinvestment
motion?
zone, number 1,
You've got
downtown
it.
Kerrville, TERS.
It's,
Oh, okay, I have it now.
you have it.
Okay.
Well, sorry. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2018-31 on this first reading.
Just at the board level, so
Oh.
the board doesn't adopt ordinances, we're just taking action on item B as a board, and then we come out of this, I know it's awkward.
Okay.
We come out of this, we can take action on the ordinance as a council.
So we got our baseball hats turned around backwards right now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
The
motion So, would be-
can I,
We're taking
can I
action.
can I put words in your mouth that
Please
you
do.
are, you are moving that we approve the project and financing plan reinvestment zone number 1, downtown Kerrville, TERS?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Ms. Eichner? All right, all in favor of that recommendation, that motion, if you let it be known by the raised hand. All right, and it passes, and all against. Okay, 3-1, 3-1. Okay, now,
Now, I could make that
yeah.
premature motion that I made. a minute
Okay,
ago.
we are back into council session. Let me ask you, Mr. Vocal will come back in at this point? No. Okay, after the, okay. All right, 7A, if you would read that for us.
Ordinance number 2018-24, approving a project and financing plan for tax increment reinvestment zone number 1, City of Kerrville, Texas, making various findings related to such plan, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
All right, okay. Council, do you have any questions in regard to this, or have we already pursued them? Basically pursued them? Okay. Public comment? All right. I ask for a motion on item 7A.
Now I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 2018-24.
All right, okay. Do I hear a second?
I second.
All right, okay. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. And any opposed by like sign, and it carries 3-1. All right. Yeah, and now Vocal can come back in. 7B. Okay, Ms. Dozier. After Ms. Brown reads that in, please.
Ordinance number 2018-31, amending the budget for fiscal year 2018 to authorize the transfer of funds between different funds to account for a general fund balance and make other amendments as provided herein.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm coming to you today, consistent with what we've done in prior years, bringing forward a budget amendment that is for several routine and housekeeping items. We do this as part of our year-end close process. Several of these items you've seen before, but I'd like to briefly go through them with you. I believe you have information in your packet. As we discussed in previous budget workshops, the first item that we're bringing forward is a transfer of $900,000 in excess general fund balance based on the fiscal year 2017 audited financial statements. And we're proposing that that be distributed in 3 different areas: $550,000 to general asset replacement fund, $200,000 to the golf fund, and $150,000 to the general capital projects fund. Item number 2 accounts for some additional revenue and expenditure in the grant fund related to a rifle-resistant body armor grant that the police department received this year from the Department of Justice. Item number 3 relates to several items for the fire department. They received some unbudgeted revenue during the year, and then they made expenditures related to that unbudgeted revenue. They received reimbursement for hurricane and severe weather deployment. They received a grant and some miscellaneous donations. And with that extra money, they spent that on an updated Knox box system, a storage building, some generator repairs, medical equipment, training, and overtime. Moving on to item number 4, we've previously had a separate fund called the Main Street Fund. We've decided to, as of the end of the year, close that into the general fund. There's $5,000 left in that fund. The only thing that we were accounting for in that fund lately has been the holiday parade. So that will be paid for out of the general fund going forward. Item number 5 is related to the Callow Theater Endowment Fund, which is a restricted fund. Some additional expenditures there to cover allowable HVAC, electrical, and lighting repairs at the theater. Item number 6 relates to a timing difference, and this is in the Water and Sewer Capital Projects Fund. So we budget by the project, and this is a multi-year project that we're talking about here. It's the reuse pond. So we have a total project budget, but then we also put in our individual annual budget how much we think will be spent each year on that project. So we're looking at increasing the expenditures in fiscal year 18 for the reuse pond. When we made the fiscal year 18 budget, we thought that the reuse pond would be a little farther along and that we would have had more expenditures in 17, but they actually ended up happening in 18. We are still expecting that project to finish at least $1.2 million under budget, and we will allocate those additional or those remaining funds to other projects in the Water and Sewer Capital Projects Fund, such as the oxidation ditch and clarifier rehabilitation project. Item number 7 relates to the insurance reserve fund. This is also a timing difference issue. We received insurance proceeds in the last fiscal year, but made the repairs in the current fiscal year for some damage that occurred at the golf course and the police department building. Item number 8 relates to another restricted special revenue fund. It's the municipal court special revenue fund. A portion of the revenues that go into that fund must be spent for technology items that benefit a municipal court. So there's some real specific parameters there. They've been building their balance in this fund over several years, and they found a automated kiosk this year that would qualify for those municipal court technology funds. And then item number 9 is something that you've seen every month for the since December, but this is in the Water and Sewer Fund. We did a debt refunding in December of 2017, and that changed the amount of our debt service for the year, and so there was a transfer between the debt service fund and the Water and Sewer Fund to account for that. And finally, the last item relates to the insurance reserve fund. Amazingly, we've had 5 vehicles totaled this year. No injuries, thankfully. And so those vehicles, we received insurance settlements related to the vehicles, but we paid for replacement vehicles out of the asset replacement fund. So we'd like to transfer money from that insurance reserve fund to the asset replacement fund in the amount that we received from the insurance settlement.
After all those totalings, did we keep our insurance?
Yeah, well, luckily,
Speak icon.
on several cases, it was another insurance company paying us because it was not our fault, so. And that's it.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's all I have, and I'm happy to
Okay.
answer any questions.
That's a lot, but it is not uncommon at this time of year, am I right?
Correct. We did the same kind of process last year, and I think we had, I want to say we had either 10 or 11 items last year as well. We think that this process works well. These are for just kind of unexpected, unanticipated items that come up during the year, and then we want to get them cleaned up as we close our fiscal year end.
And this is all reflected in the budget that you adopted for fiscal year 19.
Yes, that's correct. Like you saw the $900,000 that we contemplated, that's part of the proposed budget book. And you saw definitely in the capital projects fund information about the reuse pond and what was spent in 17 versus 18, that kind of thing. But this is kind of just the formal stamp on amending the budget.
Since they're already running the time on Ms. Eigner, do you have any questions?
No, but I'm ready to make a motion if they're ready for one.
Okay.
I've got a couple questions.
Yeah.
Mark and I discussed this morning. I'm still kind of confused on it,
Okay.
but as far as Cali Theater repairs,
Yes.
I tried to go through the agreement that we have with Playhouse 2000, and in, let's see, section 513, it's the Playhouse Authority for Operation, Maintenance and Management, and section 5.22 is direct city support. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't make the repairs. I guess Mark kind of stated that the endowment fund is a little different. We can use it for that, but this is another opportunity for me to bring up the agreement we have, and I think we need to address that because there are some things in there that have changed and don't really apply to it today, and maybe we can look into doing that.
And yeah, thank you for that comment. And Mr. McDaniel is correct in stating that I think we're talking about 2 different things, but I understand that, Playhouse 2000 is involved, and so this may be a good time for you to talk about that. But this is the Callow Theater Endowment Fund, And so this is a fund where the community foundation, or a donor through the community foundation, donated $700,000 to set up a specific fund that is just supposed to be used for maintenance at the Callow Theater. And the endowment agreement states that they can use any revenue that they make during the year for maintenance. And then they can also use up to 5% of the corpus for maintenance items. And so these items fall within those parameters.
Staff is also working with Playhouse 2000 on revisions to that 20-year-old maintenance contract. So
Okay.
We do anticipate that coming before the council here in short order.
Okay. The other one, people have gotten those things in the mail about our water quality. The clarifier will be part of the process of addressing that. Is that correct?
Mr. Hoppy, would you like to?
Yes, it's really two separate items. You've got the clarifier piece, and then you've got the granular activated carbon, which is really a separate project, but they are related because they are both at the water treatment plant. But yes, sir, we are looking at, we'll have all of those contracts hopefully before you with good bids by the end of this calendar year.
Okay. I was just, the point I was wanting to make is we are addressing the water quality. I know we continue to get the letters.
Yes, sir.
Where we're trying.
Yes, and the letters specifically relate to the TTHM levels, and that specifically relates to the Texas Water Development Board funding process that we've been going through for the last several months, and that we should be finalizing in November, and then hoping to bring bids back in December to council.
Okay.
I have a couple. So generally, obviously all the amendments, I don't really have a problem with any of the amendments. It'd be nice though since a lot of those were known a lot sooner, it does we did see some of these in the budget process, but it makes it more clear during the budget process if we've already made the amendments. So I'm guessing the $4 million deal with the reuse pond, we've known that it wasn't in 17 anymore, so it'd be nice to see that one over. The 900,000, I believe, came from that we knew to capture it at the audit time, I think, so like March. It would be helpful to see that ahead of time rather than kind of post the end of the year.
I appreciate your comments on that, and definitely, we can bring multiple budget amendments to council during the year. We don't have to wait until the end, so that's something that, I appreciate your comments on, and we'll look at doing as we get into fiscal year 19.
Okay, do we have a motion on this item?
I will move that we adopt ordinance number 2018-31 to amend the budget for fiscal year 2018.
All right.
I'll second it.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Let me say this, any public discussion? Okay. All in favor of this motion, if you'd let me know by the raised hand. Okay, and it is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. 7C. Brown, would you read that for us?
Ordinance number 2018-29, authorizing the city manager to execute a special warranty deed for an approximate 0.078 acre tract of land out of the BFK survey number 116, abstract number 106, within the City of Kerrville, Kerr County, Texas. Said property consists of part of the City Hall site located at 701 Main Street, State Highway 27, authorizing the city manager to take other reasonable and necessary action to convey the property, including the authority to execute a release and termination agreement concerning said property, making such authority contingent upon the conveyance of properties to the city and the city's acceptance thereof, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and declaring an effective date.
Mr. Hoppy, we need an explanation.
Okay. Happy to be here before you tonight. Essentially, this is an ordinance authorizing the city manager to provide a land swap around the City Hall area. At the time that the deed was conveyed, City Hall had not yet been constructed, plans had not yet been developed. Since that time, there have been various degrees of ingress and egress from the property that have further developed. And so essentially what this item does is provide a cleanup of the area around City Hall to provide for that ingress and egress. But happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions on that one?
I have some comments and a couple questions. Do you have the actual amending plat that we can put up there?
I do not have.
No. It gets kind of misleading because the as platted is 0.77 acre, and the as platted does not include the clock tower, and the clock tower is 0.06 acre. So when you add those, it's 0.83, and the amending plat shows that we will only own 0.783, but that's kind of misleading. We're not losing property, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because the property, the entrance was never conveyed that is platted. So I don't want anyone thinking we're losing any property. We're actually gaining a tenth or two of, I think it's, yeah.
Let me go through these maps for you around here. So,
yeah, that white goat.
Yes, this yellow line was one of the pieces that was conveyed originally. This was a later conveyance around the clock tower area. This orange line roughly depicts the area that would be the realigned parcel boundary. And then essentially this is the completion of the realigned parcel boundary.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is the plat, the original plat includes the entrance, which was never conveyed. So that acreage didn't count. And I'm not sure how that actually happened because the city signed saying it owned it, but the property was never conveyed.
Yeah, there's no corresponding deed that was associated with that. My understanding is it was filed. I can't speak to that discrepancy. What I can speak to, the area that's in yellow is a property addition. The arrow in blue is the property deletion, which is related to the ordinance tonight. And then that area in orange is a property addition that gets you, again, back to this realigned parcel boundary.
All right, well, I would just suggest that we do not file the plat until we know the property is conveyed.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We have the deeds associated with all of those deletions and additions.
Okay. That's agreed to. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a couple of comments. So, is there a reason that we portray the agenda bill with the mystery about who the owner is? We just put owner and instead of just naming the cow since that's who owns it. Is there a reason why we did that?
I think as a practice, we don't generally list the owner within any of the agenda bills on property acquisitions or otherwise.
Oh, okay. And then the other thing is the, it's a little bit, I mean, I'm glad we're fixing this, but to say that we didn't know when we built City Hall about ingress, egress, we had to have, because when we build things, we have to actually build them with public street access, I believe. And if we do it without this change, we didn't have any. So how did we actually pull that off?
Again, I can't speak to the construction of this building. I was not here at that time.
Okay, so, but really, that's all I'm saying is, none of us here made these mistakes, but let's just call a spade a spade. I mean, we're fixing a thing that we messed up 7 years ago, and good for us, we're fixing it. But we don't need to pretend that we're doing something else. That's all.
And that does include the dumpsters?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The realigned boundary does include the dumpsters.
Mr. Broody, I don't want the journalists to say that the city made a mistake.
Well, somebody
will
did.
tell them, they're right there. Just tell them, don't say that. Okay? Okay. I mean, that's
Okay.
there, salt.
All right, okay.
I'm sure they'll listen to what I say.
Yeah, that's right. What? Yes.
I would just say, we don't know what the sequence of events was. I wouldn't call it a mistake. I don't know who did what, and in terms of surveying, in terms of filing, in terms of the whole 9 yards, because none of us were here.
No,
Yeah.
we don't know that, that's true, but
Yeah.
what we do know is we've had a subdivision code that says we can't build something without access to a public street, and we didn't have that in the property that prior to this change, we didn't have that, we can know that.
Yeah. Okay, do you have anyone to speak to this? All right, Then, do I hear a motion in regard to 7C, that ordinance?
I'll
Mr.
move that
Mayor.
we approve ordinance number 2018-29.
Okay, Mr. Vogel?
I'll second.
Second, Ms. Ackner. Okay. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay, and it passes unanimously. All right, ordinance, second reading. Ordinance number 2018-22. Ms. Brown, would you read that for us?
Ordinance number 2018-22, amending in part ordinance 99-18 as amended by adopting revised rate schedules for residential services, miscellaneous services, charges, distributed generation rider, power cost adjustment, factor rider, outdoor area lighting, and a new community solar LMI household rider containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, and establishing an effective date.
All right, Ms. Whitler?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We hadn't planned on going through the presentation again. We presented that at the last meeting, but we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Or I should say Jill's happy to answer any questions you
Yeah,
have.
thank you, Jill. All right. Okay, any questions that council has?
I had some,
Question
but
and
you
a
answered.
statement.
Okay,
I understand the needs to raise the rates because of expenses and things, but I would like us not to do the customer service charge. I would like to see us use volumetric rate increase, so it's fair across the board. Don't know how you came up with the what you did, but that's I hope with your in 2020. I hope you can go with a volumetric increase instead of the customer service charge. And I just, with all the rates that we're increasing, it's unfortunate, but I hope we're all keeping the lower income people in mind. I feel that maybe some of us are out of touch with them, and try to do our best not to raise the cost of living for them.
okay. Mr.
Uh, As far as the volume, the structure of the rate, we're following the rate consultants' recommendations. They do many of these studies every year, and this does make the percentage higher for lower consumption customers.
Which would probably be lower income people because they're trying to save money.
That's not necessarily true, because when you look at the housing that lower income families are in, a lot of times they're older housing that have inefficient appliances, building exteriors that aren't well insulated. So actually low consumption a lot of times is a vacation home, a resident, a secondary residence for guest quarters for help or things like that, wells, barns on bigger properties and things like that. So I don't think you can equate low income with low,
Consumption.
Well, they're still low usage customers. I would assume that some of those would be lower income because they're trying to save. And I feel that we're actually targeting them because they're trying to save.
And what we're
And
doing.
it may be the ones you described also, though.
Yeah, what we're doing here, we're trying to establish a rate that charges for the cost of service and avoid having customers subsidizing each other. We have to build rates on averages, but we want our customers paying the fair cost, the cost that it takes us to provide service to them. And that's the philosophy used in structuring the rates.
Could you do that in a volumetric rate or no?
No, because there are fixed costs that need to be a part of that monthly charge, and so when you put fixed cost into the volumetric rate, what you're doing is you're making higher usage customers pay more than their fair share. And this is actually, my understanding is that rating agencies are starting to look at this when they review your financials. Not that that's a big deal for us, but I think what we're doing here is the right thing to do, and it's all our board spent a lot of time looking at this, and they felt very strongly that we needed to adjust this. When we came to council 6 years ago, our monthly charge was $424, and cost of service was something like $12 and change, and we raised it by $1. So now we're here 6 years later, and now the cost of service is $14.88. We're not even keeping up with the increase in the cost of service or what that monthly charge should be. And ultimately, if you're not following the cost of service, what you're doing is you have a rate that is, in essence, it's not charging what it costs to serve the customer. In my words, I would say that's not fair. So that's number one thing here is the rates are designed to recover cost to serve the customer.
Okay. Did you have a question, Ms. Seagram?
No, I was just going to say, I have asked a lot of questions already, just in case anyone was wondering, via email and through the last meeting, so that's why I don't have any now.
All right, okay. Ms. Wagner?
No.
Okay. Mr.
Yeah,
Brady?
I do, and it's, with all due respect, cost of service to the end user is perceived as whatever it costs to get the electricity to my house. And we talked last time, basically, this conservation rate view of things, and this is clearly a shift of the burden away from arguably the bad users, which are the ones that are costing us, and the ones that aren't costing us. I understand the share, but I guess I don't agree with fair share, because, like I said, decades of pricing for utilities and natural resources have always charged more for the bigger users, and by having a base rate and a volumetric rate, having the base rate be lower, that accomplishes what you referenced last time, the step system that other cities have. Having a lower than cost of service, if you will, base rate accomplishes that, and we're changing that. And all you got to do is look at that one page that you present, and no matter how you slice it, the lower income people are going to be seeing an increase, and the higher income, because you've got to believe these higher users at the extreme end, they're actually going to see a decrease. So that seems to me preposterous. But and this isn't your problem, but it's another in a trend that we're doing in the city, where we're basically pushing the burden onto the little guy, or even in this town, we've got a residential rate, commercial rate thing going on, where too much burden is placed on residential, not enough on commercial. So we've got the water rates that we're increasing, and it's based on a reuse system cost. We've got the K-Pub rates that we're increasing based on a fair share discussion, which I think is anti-conservation. And then we got the KSD bond that's coming up. I mean, we're getting bombarded, and from our seat, it's a tough sell, because it's such a big part of our population is going to be hit by this. Even small numbers, it adds up when they get combined. I don't know if there's really much to respond to there. I wish we had done simply we needed to collect 2.2% more revenue. It would have been nice to see it do it on a volumetric rate and collect it that way and stay with our conservation rate stuff that we had.
Our current rate really isn't a conservation rate. If you want a conservation rate, you look at something like Austin Energy does, where the first 500 kilowatt hours is charged at 7.7 cents. And when you get up to the really high usage levels, they're charging 15 cents. It's like 2 times
Right,
as
so
much.
this isn't a conservation rate, but the change that we're making is a policy in the other direction, from making it more of a conservation to less of one. We are clearly making it less conservation rate applicable.
So our approach on conservation are energy efficiency programs. And so there we do energy efficiency audits and we do rebates. The other thing is that a big customer isn't a bad customer. And it doesn't cost more to buy the energy for a big customer than it does for a little customer. For residential customers, all the kilowatt hours are costing us the same. You know, so if they cost us the same to procure, why shouldn't we charge the customers the same when they use them?
Okay,
It'd be different if we had, like some of the big utilities are having to put power plants in, and maybe then, you know, there's a resource issue and there's a cost as they're having to add new resources, but our costs aren't structured that way, and for those residential customers, every kilowatt hour costs the same, and it doesn't, if everyone went out and used twice as much, or if they used half as much, they would still cost us the same.
Right, so a big customer is not a bad customer, I didn't say that either, but a little customer is a good customer too, and we're penalizing them. We're raising their rates, and we're decreasing the rates on the big customer that we're not calling a bad customer.
So
That's pretty much it, my time's up, sorry.
So take a little customer that's a gate opener. They don't use any energy. We have to read the same meter. We have to install a transformer for them. We have all these costs to serve a very small customer. We're trying to be fair here, ultimately. We're trying to be fair.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this item?
I move, Mr. Mayor, that we approve ordinance 2018-22, second reading.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second. Before we go to a vote, is there anybody that wants to speak to this? All right. Okay.
I'd like to say one more thing, Mayor.
All right. Yes.
I'll support your rate increase. I do disagree with some of it. I would suggest that you try to do the other rate increase at the 2020.
Okay. I'll take that back to the board.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All in favor of this motion, ordinance number 2018-22, if you'd let me know with a raised hand. Okay. And those opposed? Okay. It passes 4-1. Thank you, Mr. Whitler. Thank you, Jill. All right. We're looking at 9A. If you would read that, Ms. Brown.
Approval of the minutes for the regular city council meeting held on August the 14th, 2018. It was tabled at your August 28th, 2018 meeting due to requested revisions by Councilmember Brady. And those changes, the requested changes I put them at your places this afternoon. So those are the changes that Mr. Brady has requested, and those are the changes we're asking you to vote on.
And they're the changes that what?
We're asking you to vote on.
Okay, all right, okay. All right. Comments or questions on that item?
Yeah, I have some. I actually reviewed the July 16th video 3 or 4 times today, and there's some wording that Councilman Baruti has suggested was said that wasn't said. I think there's 2 words that you used regarding and flip it. Those words were never said in that meeting. I believe that the meeting, at this particular time in that meeting, was a discussion on the budget for the EIC as it pertained to set-asides for housing. So there was quite a thorough discussion about plans for this $1.1 million that's in this set-aside. There was a comment made by a board member, but it was a single comment by a single board person, and the rest of the comment and the conversation had to do with plans on how to use the $1.1 million that was set aside. So those are my 2 issues. I never heard the words "and flip it," and I think it was an isolated comment, not reflective of the EIC board.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and respond to that, because basically, the minutes that are being modified are not the EIC meeting ones, they're actually my words. So these are the words I spoke at a council meeting, and the "and flip it" part is not something that Mr. Barnett said. Those are words that I said, and those got added to these minutes because I had said them. I didn't actually request those, that's why
Well,
they're
there
yellow.
you can see my confusion then, because I would like to make a motion that we just accept the minutes as they were written August 14th, without any revisions. If you want to really see what happened or hear what happened in that meeting, watch the video. It's the most accurate that you'll get
Okay,
on what took place.
these are the minutes from a council meeting. So these are actually words spoken at the council meeting. So we're not questioning anything other than those words. So you're basically saying I didn't say these words at that council meeting. So the review that you were supposed to be doing was the August 14th council meeting. Did I say these words? If I did, that's the reason
What
they're
was
in
your
there.
purpose for saying it at that meeting? Regarding an EIC board meeting?
Well, that's actually in the minutes, and if you review the August 14th, you can find that out.
But I think you're taking,
No. Read what you have in front of you right now. It says, council also discussed the following: were any funds allocated for taking over property? This was done at council. Mr. Hoppy noted there had been no discussions regarding any condemnation. Following his comment, Mr. McDaniel said that, and then Mr. Baruti responded saying this. That happened at the council meeting. So if you want to find out the reasons that happened at the council meeting, then you can go look at the August 14th. So this is really just a matter of amendments to minutes that actually words were spoken at a council meeting.
okay, you can see how I got lost in the
Yes, but do you understand now?
tons and tons of revisions and new revisions, and I didn't say, and this got said. So I guess I question the energy we're spending on this in the first place.
I do too, but what you're looking at right now is actually the revisions that I intended to make in the first place. And the extra revisions that were brought up last time were not mine.
I still
So-
question the reason
So
why.
I'm reading you a very straightforward edition
Yeah,
that can
I
be
have
verified
this.
at the meeting if you watch the video. And-
If we approve this as presented,
Uh-huh.
will you be comfortable?
Yes, that's
And
the reason I
satisfied.
proposed it.
Okay.
Okay,
Then I will-
my question is this. Is version A what you want in the minutes, and version B is what the city secretary said
No.
the tape reflects?
No, version A was not what I wanted in the minutes. Version A is what got misunderstood to be what I wanted. It wasn't. And the reason it got pulled was because of that. And we never sat back down to do this. This, what you're looking at here, is what I wanted in the minutes. These were the revisions I wanted in the minutes, which is why we're proposing them today.
Okay, and so if, what you're saying is, if I take those recommendations, those minutes, and look at the video of that council meeting,
Yes.
I will hear this
Those words.
and only this.
Well, it was a longer meeting than this, but you will hear these words, yes, in that sequence, yes. That's correct.
So you're not adding words that were not said in the
Well,
meeting?
I'm not adding words that were not said, that's correct. I'm adding words that were spoken at the meeting. That's what minutes are, and I'm not doing anything different than that.
I understand what minutes are.
So we would be ready to approve this then?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Then
Let's
I
move on
move
to
that
it.
we approve the minutes with the corrections.
I haven't made one yet. Well, I actually made a motion that we approve
Oh,
the
okay, I'm sorry.
August 14th minutes as they
Okay.
were written.
Then I second that.
Okay. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded that we approve the August
Wait,
14 minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure, is
Yeah,
your
My
motion
motion
to?
is different from what you're proposing,
Right,
I
yes,
believe.
your motion is to
So,
accept, to
Let me
approve them
retract the
as.
motion, just to go ahead and move forward. You go ahead and make what you were gonna say. We'll just approve this and, as he wants to amend it.
Okay.
B. Well, actually, it's not B, it's what we have before us.
I move then. Are we okay for
Yes,
that?
we're okay.
I move that we approve the minutes with the revisions presented to us for the regular city council meeting held on August 14th, 2018.
Okay.
Second that.
All right, you got a motion second. All in favor? Raise your hand. All right. Okay, all opposed? Okay. Okay, 9B, professional services agreement. If you would read that for us.
Professional services agreement with 6S Engineering Incorporated for the pavement master plan update in an amount of $88,800.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. I have a short presentation to bring you up to speed before we do the approval. Kind of tell y'all what we've done on the last couple months as our pavement management plan and the strategies that we've been using. Get going too fast here. Okay, in February 2016, the FUGO completed the first of the City of Kerrville's automated pavement condition assessments. The report listed that most of the common distresses in the City of Kerrville included potholes, asphalt bleeding, surface raveling, block cracking, alligator cracking, and edge cracking. The four methods that we are using to combat those distresses are crack sealing, slurry sealing, patch and overlay, and pavement reconstruction. On the far right-hand side of this graph, you can see the button here. It's that one. On the far right-hand side, you can see the percent of completion that we've done of each one of those, and that's a total over a 3-year period. That's not just this year. That's each one of those items in the 3-year period. The first one being the crack seal. Well, let me skip down to the patch and mill and overlay. We've completed 100% of that with work we've all done in-house. The crack seal and the slurry seal, we've done our city forces, fix potholes, apply level up, sweep all the streets, do the tree trimming, work all the components before the contractors get here. We've done 100% of the slurry seal, and we've done 66% of the crack seal. The remainder of the 66%, the 44% that's left, will be contracted out, or it has been contracted out, and they'll be here in November to finish up the crack seal. The pavement reconstruction is the piece that we've struggled with the most. We're about 41% over the 3-year period. So we've been looking at that over that period of time and trying to figure out what are some efficiencies, what can we do differently to kind of catch up with that, if you will. So we combined some street segments, so our street department won't be moving all over town to do more lengths of street. The way it's written in the plan right now, it's block by block. We utilized 2 different crews. Initially, we had all the crews working in one spot for the dirt work first, and then they would go to the mill and overlay, and then they'd go to the pavement. And we broke that out and had one group of guys doing just the dirt work. And that helped a little bit, but it still didn't quite get us where we needed to be. And so we changed it up again a little bit. The dirt work crew was spending a lot of time with the flex base and how long, what you have to pack the subgrade, and then you bring in a layer of base and you compact that, and you bring in another layer and compact that. This year we've gone to a black base. Luckily, since it's been raining, black base is not. It's a lot more forgiving. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's a whole lot more forgiving. You're able to put it down all in one lift, bring it all up, and you're ready to pave on it. And soon you don't have to wait for the water conditions to be right for the paving. So that's helped, but it still hasn't gotten us to that full allotment. So we hired a contractor, and we have a contractor now working on Singing Wind. And I think they're just about done paving that as it stands today. So what would the new plan do for the City of Kerrville? Why is it a benefit to have one? It would reassess our street condition, make sure that the calibration. We made some assumptions in that original plan that said we think our streets are going to deteriorate at this rate, and we need to be in here fixing these streets before they get to this level of deterioration. And so we'll be able to assess that benchmark, see did the streets deteriorate any over 3 years, how fast are they deteriorating, and they'll also be able to see what we've done, the work that we've done, and how is it holding up, and what are there any methods or techniques that we need to change to put in our arsenal against the deteriorating street. We'll look at different pavement repair methods. One of them may be chip seal. That's something that we stayed away from in the first report. That would be something council can give us consideration or direction on if we want to consider doing chip sealing in the city streets or not. We'd incorporate our own paving abilities. Now we know how much work our guys can do and what we can get done. So we can roll that into the plan, and instead of being having some money set in there to do the reconstruction, we'll be able to fulfill the plan a little bit better and have the components that we're actually can complete, the mill and overlay, chip seal if we do it, fund all that stuff and have less full depth reconstruction, because it is very time consuming and very expensive. That's the biggest, most expensive time consuming process that we do. And then again, we would establish a new CIP plan, which would be to evaluate the budget and the repair techniques and prioritize the streets that we're looking at. All of that to kind of roll you up into the presentation or the award of this bid, which Kyle will do the award portion of it. But I'll be happy to answer any questions about where we are on the paving and how we stand today.
Yeah, at some point I'd like to get that PowerPoint.
This one?
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
sir.
Okay, council, any questions, observations?
Question/comment. You mentioned chip seal. I'd still like to put a workshop together with the county and the city, because I know they use chip seal, and they can kind of look at the pros and cons, and maybe even come to some kind of agreement where we work with the county. And I'd like to put that together. If I need to do it, I will. I've already talked to some people at the county, and they seem interested.
I think the mayor has talked to the county judge and others about a joint meeting at some point, so.
Yeah.
How soon?
Don't have it on the.
Okay, I'd like to do it before the end of the year. Is that gonna be possible?
Let's talk about
Okay.
that. Okay. All right. Anything else?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
there's going to be a new plan. They're not going to come in and do one block and go to another neighborhood and do one block and come back to the first neighborhood and do another one block that doesn't connect. That's not going to happen, right?
Right, our desire is to have them more unified, where we're having multiple sections working in one street. The problem is that the soil conditions are different, the way they put the asphalt down is different, and they deteriorate at different levels or different rates. And so this block may not be, even though it's paved and everything done at the same time, it may be in a lot worse shape than this next one. And so to the degree possible, yes, we will no longer have that. We'll have a whole section of street, but we kind of got to hem those together or hem those together within the plan. Yes, that's a big component of this next plan, and it's very beneficial to the city to not have that contractor moving all over town trying to do a block at a time. Saves us a lot of mobilization cost.
Yeah, and particularly when there's other long stretches that really need it, and where they're working hasn't really needed it. Some have, some haven't.
Do you know, I don't, so this is coming in about 89,000 is what we're projecting or whatever. Do you know what the original plan cost?
It's very similar. Do you remember the fellow?
It was right at that same ballpark. I want to say 85 to 90.
All right, I was just curious.
Very, very similar range.
And there would be a contract on this? Is it another 5-year plan? 3-year, did you say?
Well, it's a plan that we can follow, and depending on how the report comes back. If we see that the original plan is really close to what we're seeing still, we may be able to push that out more than 3 years, or maybe a 5-year or 7-year plan, depending on when the city wants to do it. I don't want to put a threshold down right now to say, if it comes back significantly different and pavement is moving a whole lot more than we anticipated, the city may want to do them more often than every 5 years. But we would anticipate 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. You have any other questions from council? Any other questions from the public? Okay. Do I hear a motion in regard to 9B?
I'll make a motion to authorize the execution of a professional service agreement with 6S Engineering, Inc. for the pavement master plan update to the tune of $88,800.
All right. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by the upraised hand. Okay. It passes unanimously. City manager's report.
Yeah, very briefly, Mayor and Council, just an update on some of the flooding that we've had here in the last day or so. We're still assessing some of the flood debris, particularly along the river. Parks is already addressing that and hope to begin dealing with that this week, pending more rain. But also, Kudos to our fire department. Our swift water rescue team was called out to help with the Llano River, and they were able to help over a 7-hour period to reach 10 people and bring them to high ground. So,
Wow,
Good,
that's
good.
great. Thank
Do
you
we,
very
do we know what
much.
the deaths have been in Junction?
I do not.
Okay, okay. You said 7 hours? Okay. Wow. All right. Okay, items for future agendas. I had mentioned this before, but I'd like for us to come back and take a look at affordable housing and where we are, where the projections and that kind of thing. Okay? At this time, we will go into executive session.
Mayor, you're going to need a
Under-
motion.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, somebody move that we go into executive session.
I so moved.
Well, you have to say you
All
want to go in.
Got a motion, a second?
Wait. We need to capture the section number.
Okay.
Okay, the second is Sigerman?
Well, she's going to give you
Okay.
the
I
section that
move
we're
that
going to go under.
we
Oh, that's right, okay.
move into executive session for number 551.074. Do it.
I second it.
Yeah, okay,
Teamwork.
all right.
And I need you to vote on the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's getting late. Yeah, why don't we vote on the motion? All
Why
in
not?
favor of going into executive session, let me know by the raised
See
hand.
what facilities.
I don't really wanna
So
go.
therefore, I'm not thinking straight.
When someone hits the dial, it rattles.
Oh, the mic?
Yeah.
All right, we're back in session at 9 o'clock. The council opted not to do the evaluations simply because we feel like we are not ready. And so we are going to work on developing some forms and then do evaluation at the end of the next council meeting. Okay.
And just to add, it's just simply a lack of information. That's all it is.
Right. Okay. That case, we are adjourned at 9:01.